Welcome to the 32nd Street and 31st Street Block Association Candidate Meetup.
Thank you so much.
We're really happy for you to join us. We know how much work it is to be a candidate, and we really respect all the work you're doing for the community and really putting yourself out there.
Thank you so much.
Of course. So first, we'd like you to just spend about 3 minutes telling us about yourself.
Okay.
A little bit about your background, your vision for the neighborhood, and how you envision working with us and the block associations, how we'll be able to get in touch with you, and how you'll make sure that you're taking into account our priorities.
Okay. I'm going to try to do that in 3 minutes. And I may forget something, you're going to remind me.
Okay.
All right, my name is MONIQUE Chandler-WATERMAN. I'm a candidate for City Council in District 45. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I am a first-generation American. My family is from Jamaica. I'm from Barbados. I lived in East Flatbush all my life. I've been married over 17 years. I have 4 talented children. And when I had my first daughter, I just knew that I didn't want my kids to experience the same hardships that I went through, and I wanted to break the family cycle. I was raised by a single mom on public assistance. The village helped raise me, and we went through a lot. So what I did was, when I realized there was unmet needs in my community for women like myself, I work overnight shift. I work full-time overnight. I went to school full-time, and I realized there wasn't adequate childcare. So I started a 24-hour childcare facility on 46 Church and Snyder, the first one in East Flatbush. Then I realized parents needed more resources, so I launched a 501c3 nonprofit organization after that. It's called East Flatbush Village Inc., where we do wraparound services when it comes to arts, athletics, academic enrichment programs. We're in 11 different schools across the district. We organize block associations, tenant associations. We work with youth, adult, senior citizens. So we do senior citizen programs. We partner with senior centers. We also do anti-violence initiative and mental health initiatives to holistically take care of the whole entire community. During that time, I met the former council member, Jamani Williams. I believed in his mission, his vision for the community. I have been side by side with him for the past 10 years in the district. He asked me to work for him as his director of community outreach, and later asked me to run for the seat, and I'm proud to have earned his endorsement along with Assembly Member Nick Perry, Senator Parker, and a host of electeds, local electeds in the community. Now, my vision for the district is to make sure that not only we're unified, but we're civically engaged. So when I get into office, the first thing I would do is have monthly meetings where the community members are able to connect the dots between legislation, what policy is being written, also with the city council budget. So you should have a voice at the table. I know when I go to city council, I represent over 180,000 in the district, but I think the first step is to make sure we get more people civically engaged by understanding the process and how things affect them. For the past over 10 years, I have organized East 29th Street Block Association, which is 4-on-1. It's from Glenwood all the way to Avenue D. 46 Church and Snyder, 51st Church and Snyder. I do something called Occupy the Corner. So I go out late at night from 10 to 2 a.m. with the former council member. We do community-based organization that can provide wraparound services. Also, parents who lost their loved ones to gun violence. We go to hotspot areas like if there was drug use, there was a recent shooting, there's gang violence. And what we do is ask them what resources do they need and how can we help them with the issues on the block. So sometimes they need job opportunities, immigration services. And then from there, we organize through the winter months the block association, the tenant association, there's buildings there. So we continue year-round organizing and helping with that block to reduce the violence, but also just provide resources. So I partner with Flatbush Tenant Coalition to do to build the tenant association. They was having issues with MCI, so they was constantly getting major capital improvements. They had to constantly pay if they fixed the window, the stairs. So through that process, I learned a lot about the tenant issues, but also making sure we have forums and information for homeowners as well. So we have to make sure the tenants are protected, make sure homeowners are protected, and everybody feels equal in the process. And of course, there's an affordable housing crisis in this community where there's not adequate affordable housing or real true affordable housing. There's a mandatory inclusionary housing plan that is not best suited for our community because it's not reflective of our income. So I will fight for more income targeting housing. I focus also on public safety, as I mentioned, with anti-violence initiatives, also working with the police department to build better relations in the community. I worked for the past 10 years with 67 Precinct Clergy Council, God Squad, where we were very successful in reducing the violence for the 67 Precinct. It hasn't been this safe in over 60 years. And of course, that doesn't mean anything for those who lost loved ones, because one is too many. We also, equity in education. So I was a public school teacher, as an educator, also a professor in 2 colleges, and on the PTA. And like I said, I have 4 children. I work a lot with making sure, protesting, make sure the school has full funded. Our public school system has not been fully funded, and I don't know when. Making sure there's equity in education. A lot of times, people who've never been treated unequal is defining equity for our community. We want to make sure it's more culturally diverse in schools. So there's a lot of priorities that I do have and vision for the community, but I am boots to the ground, and I believe if we do block by block, we can help the whole community. So with the precinct and the clergy God squad, they have different sectors. So my belief is that if you have a CBO or a block association in this area, if something happened, we all meet and say, how can we help with these issues? So if everybody come to the table as community leaders, we can help with the issues in the community, because I think we could do community policing, and we could also regulate what's happening in our community. So the vision is civic engagement, having a robust team that's reflective of the community when I get in city council, and just make sure that I join committees that's best helping our community.
That sounds lovely.
Sorry, I went over time.
That's okay. So we're trying to get to know you. That's what our goal
Yes.
is here today, and let you know a little bit of what our priorities are.
Yes.
So for education, for example, the elite schools have this specialized test that the kids have to take, and children of color have been very underrepresented in those schools. I think in this past year there were only 7 kids of color that got into those schools. And my understanding is that in some communities, the kids just aren't aware of that test, and they're not prepared for that test, whereas in other communities, they're prepared for that test from the time they're very, very young. So for example, what would you do to make sure that children in our community are aware of that specialized test and prepared for it?
Well, number one, like I said, the schools are not fully funded. So we're lacking a lot of financial resources. So they're not getting basic things and basic training, and not room for a test like that, because education is lacking in our public school system. So besides working with the push on the state legislature to make sure that we get the full funding from the schools, making sure the school is supported. A lot of times we are teaching to a test, and that's not the best way. We're not really adhering to the needs of the kids. And I'm, for one, don't think a test is the only way to measure a child. I think there's more than one way to measure a child's success.
Right, but those schools you can only get into from that one test. That's the way it's set up. I understand that, but
I think that also needs to change.
Well, there was a lot of effort to change it. Yeah. There was a lot of pushback.
No, I understand.
Good luck on changing that.
I understand. But we do need to have more where it's more. Normally, other schools they have preparation for test prep, and in our neighborhood we have to pay for that. We have to pay more than that. There's a big overhaul of the whole education system that has to happen with the curriculum, making sure it's culturally responsive. And I think teaching to a test is not the best way, but our kids from K to 12 don't have the correct resources because we're not fully funded. So I think it starts from there, and then having community voices at the table to make sure that our curriculum is culturally responsive, that we are getting the best education possible. It's a professional development. What is lacking? I think we need to do a whole assessment of what's going on with our K through 12 public school system to see where we're lacking, where the holes are. But I know definitely the funding is the #1 priority, and then we could work on the other issues that's happening as well. So
okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So let's move on. We want to talk about zoning. What's your understanding of the zoning issues facing this neighborhood, and what would you do to address them?
Well, I know that I'm on a community board. I know that there was an issue with them passing for a particular zoning a couple of years ago. So now there's a lot of upzoning, and we are trying. Right now, they're working on getting a consultant to come in. I know it's like, I don't know, it was over $40,000 to get a consultant to come in to now help with the zoning issue. And while we're doing that, there's still rapid development and the rezoning. We need contextual zoning where it's not changing the landscape of the whole entire community. Like when you drive down your block, all the houses are pretty much the same level. It would be unfortunate for someone to come in and then they or somebody, God forbid, is in foreclosure, sold their house, and then they come in as a developer and then try to upzone. So we definitely to make sure that we deal with that issue on the community board level, and as an elected official, making sure there's responsible development when it comes to land use. So a lot of developers coming out community, they're not making sure that we have to make sure there's affordable housing, enough affordable housing for our community members, and target income for our community members, because a lot of times they say that it's affordable and it's not. So it needs to be reflective of the income that's coming in. That's for our community members.
So you would be against the upzoning, and Is that, I just want to make sure
Yeah, I
I'm
just
clear
want to
about
make
your
sure that
position.
we're not changing the character of our community. We need to make sure that our homeowners are able to look through their window without, being blocked. The congestion of having a multi-unit, it's disrespectful to come in and develop in our community. We have no say, and it changes the whole landscape of what our community look like.
And what specific steps would you take to try to combat the upzoning?
Well, with that, we're working with state legislators, making sure there's legislation that could pass to help with the rezoning issue. So I would definitely look into that to know details how we can help with the issue that's happening here. I also spoke before about making sure when there are developers that we are putting the clergy who's doing some development in the community, making sure that they're at the table because they're doing some affordable housing. So when we talk about rezones, try to hard not to talk about rezone without talking about development and what's going on in the community. I just think that we need to be more responsible when we come into the community and when it comes to zoning issues and when it comes to rezoning and when it comes to affordable housing to make sure that it's inclusive of our community members.
Okay, and have you been endorsed by anyone in the real estate industry?
No, I've taken a pledge from New York Community of Change to not take any money from developers.
And
I
have you been
not done
endorsed
that.
by any of them?
No,
Okay.
no, no, not at
Super.
all.
That's great to hear.
Yes.
So moving on, one of our highest priorities in our block association is greening the neighborhood. We received a prize.
Yes,
Marjorie.
Green Block.
Yes.
Yes.
As the most. This is the.
Sustainability, we received the first sustainability award awarded by Brooklyn Botanical Garden.
Oh, great,
And
great.
we have actually received other awards.
Oh,
Yeah, we've
great.
also
Other categories.
Yeah.
All right. I'm glad
placed
this
in the greenest block in Brooklyn
Oh,
several
wow.
times.
Wow, District 45 is doing great things. I think 25th Street also has Green
yes.
Block, right? So that's good.
So we want to know what you would do to help us continue to green the neighborhood, and also what you would do to help us clean up the litter in the neighborhood. The litter is really a blight, and we have worked to reached out to the maintenance department, tried to get more garbage cans, tried to get the businesses to work with us to clean up in front of their stores, and often have not been successful with that, have not received participation. So what would you do to clean up the litter in the neighborhood?
Well, one, I would like to definitely have a meeting with the City Agent Sanitation, BK17 over here, to see what they can do. We talk about the garbage cans and what more we can do. But I know on our block, we do block cleanups, right, as well. But you said to prevent that from the littering?
Yeah, we've done block
Fines.
cleanups, but you know, the litter just keeps.
That's after
the fines.
the fines.
Yes.
It will have to be some fines in place. And is it really, where's the litter coming from? People just passing by? Because you're so close to Nostrand, they pass by and just drop litter. What are you finding that the litter is really coming from?
Like if you look on Church Avenue, it's just
Yeah, that's-
right.
it's
just
horrible.
everywhere. And then we met with the manager of Chase Bank, and they told us that they were getting their fines lowered, and they were just paying them in bulk at a low rate.
So what it is that that's a cost of just doing business for the businesses. That's what it become. We can speak to the Merchant Association, the bids, to make sure we hold the business owners accountable as well. It's very commercial over there. And if you're gonna be in the community, taking money from the community, you have to make sure that we're keeping the community clean as well. So when I think about Church Avenue, the Merchant Association needs to be at that table, sanitation, the block association leaders, and figure out how we're gonna come to understand of how we wanna treat our community.
So you could bring those stakeholders together
Yes,
and
they
try to
need
help
to
us
be-
make
yes.
progress on that. We would be
Yes.
very grateful for that.
Yes, that's what
That would be great.
that definitely needs to happen. I think that would be the first step, and then implementing and having, of course, elected officials there at the table to enforce and make sure we stay on top of that with its letters, its campaigns. You cannot be in this community, selling to the community, reaping the benefits, but you're not giving back to the community. And then they participate in block cleanups, and go from there. But that's what I think.
Excellent. Okay,
Yes.
great. So moving on, the subway and the bus system really leave a lot to be desired. There's rats on the subway platforms. The trains are
Yes.
crowded. There's delays. We really feel like we get the brunt of those shutdowns for the repairs sometimes, and the bus lines haven't been revamped in years to really focus on where the new communities are and how people are moving now in Brooklyn. What would you do to hold the MTA accountable and really improve the bus and subway service?
Well, we definitely need to expand with the bus lines. It's crazy. And I know that they passed congestion pricing, but they have not figured out how that's going to impact us as community members financially, what that's going to look like, what the details of that's going to break down. I know they put together like a task force, on the state level to deal with that, and then that money was supposed to go into fixing the MTA, but we know that money has gone to the MTA and it has not gone where it needs to go. So we definitely need to hold them accountable, and we know it's mostly run by the state. They have the most appointments on the board, so we need to have the conversation with them as well and see what's really happening, where's the money going, transparency to see their books, to see how it's going to be funded, because the idea was we're going to do this whole big plan with congestion pricing. It's going to fix the MTA, and there we go. And then we raise it 50 cents, and then our service doesn't change. It doesn't get any better. So we really have to see what that task force is going to do to make sure that we're going to really truly fix the MTA. And also there should be a community impact study, assessment, like what's going on in the community, what do we need? Do they know what bus lines do we need? How is that survey done? I know that can be done through the community board, but we need to have the community voice at the table, figuring out for this area, this is what we need. Because those who sit in the office and sit on the board, they don't really know what we need.
We don't have the feeling that those people even ride the MTA.
Yes. Yeah, that's
The people who are making decisions about the subway.
We
Are they
have
really
this
gone there?
conference on the MTA. We ride the train together, and we all talk about this. They have to me, you have to live through the experience. You cannot be at any table, you've never been treated unequal, but you're talking about equity. You need to have people that's been through the process, that's been going through it, living through it, and then they're at the table. The problem is we're never at these tables.
So again, specifically, how would you make that happen? How would you bring those stakeholders together and let us, communicate to them what we're experiencing?
To my state legislators like Kevin Parker, to remember Nick Perry, and I'm going to ask them what that looked like. I did ask them that. I was like, so what does congestion price? How do you break that down? What does that look like? They said they put together a task force. So they're trying to work out the details. So they passed it, but they have not worked out the details. So now they're in this stage of putting that together. I would like to see how we can get our voice in that. Where what is that package going to look like when you're saying you're going to give the money from this to fix the MTA? We need to make sure it's going where it needs to be, and it has more bus lines, that the service is better. They increase the price of us riding the fare, but where's that going to go? How is that going to impact us? We need more elevators as well.
And the homeless issue.
And the homeless issue.
Homeless people are living in the subways.
I met with a union. I was telling them that being that they know, I think what MTA and Breaking Ground and different organizations that deal with the homeless population should do is that that there's a lot of homeless people at this particular station. Alert them, right, to come.
They say there's nothing they can do.
Not you. Transit needs to have an MOU.
Okay.
If there's a homeless issue, and mostly they find shelters right at the train station, there needs to be a memorandum of understanding between those organizations, whichever the biggest organization is, and MTA, where they come together to work on issues. This is where we have the issue. They should have a crisis intervention team that comes out, do the assessment, figure out the housing, if there is a mental health issue, what's going on. But I think the MTA just needs to let them know where the homeless population is and the most homeless population on the train, and speak of that. So I've been having those conversations with unions who represent those from the MTA to see how we could work with that, because the homeless issue is very issue. It becomes dangerous for both.
You probably need some legislative solutions also, because right now, if a aid group comes and speaks to a homeless person, and that homeless person does not want to leave the subway or the location, there's nothing they can do, really.
But
so there
definitely needs to be enforcement and legislation, but we have to have all those people at the table from the unions that represent the MTA and those organizations that specialize in dealing with the homeless issue, so we can figure out how to really deal with it, because sometimes they have mental health issues, there's different things going on, and to protect both the workers, and MTA is being attacked, the people that the clients, and the homeless people. So we have to figure out how we can protect everybody, but everybody's safe, because being safe is not on the train for them neither. So it's legislation, but it's a whole multifaceted approach, and I don't think it's one thing that's going to solve it, but we need to really explore what would be the biggest thing. When it comes to homeless population, I find that it's a very temporary thing that they do. They don't have enough, the city agency doesn't have proper resources, where they're adequately assessing them and putting them where they need to be and finding permanent housing. Because you can't, I have a family member that was homeless. He had a trauma that led to a mental health issue, that led to self-medication, that led to crack addiction. He was living on the train, right? So we tried with that, but he had enforcement with resources and to try to figure out what the real issue is. And then when we got to the mental health, to medication, then they had different organizations that come to the table and they find out how to get him housing. But when they don't support them with housing, it's not as easy how we run our household. It's triggers for them, and they relapse and they go back on the street. So they need to have proper resources. So we're putting band-aids on issues, and it's not it shouldn't be an MTA issue, but that's where they find cover. So the agencies need to be fully funded to take care of this issue, and MTA workers and people who's riding the train should definitely be safe. So everybody needs to be accommodated in the situation, and definitely legislation needs to go along with that.
It sounds like you would bring stakeholders together
Yes.
to try to solve these issues comprehensively.
Yes, because we do legislation a lot of time and do policy, and if it's not enforced and it's not done the proper way, there's always holes in it. It's never, to me, it's not thought out to the finest detail, because there's not people at the table that's going through the issue, that's have to live with it every day. So I know people say policy a lot, but what policy has to come with, like real comprehensive policy, assessment of some type, and the community voices of the people that's affected at the table. So when you don't have that, people are missing certain things from the package, and then we still have to go back and fill in those holes, because no matter how much legislation at the time, we're still going through the issues. So I know that legislation would help a lot, but we need to truly understand as community members what we need to have in that legislation. So I would like my community members to be part of that process of building policy, and then figuring out with City Council how we can make that come to fruition.
Great, that's great.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask you one more. I'm an election security journalist,
Yes.
and I research.
Conversation before. We talked a lot about elections. Okay, 'cause I kept on trying to remember when I first met you. Okay, elections. Yes.
Yeah, I research security problems with our voting systems, and right now we have a board of elections that has a lot of conflicts of interest. New York One has done exposés on them, showing that the executive director of the board of elections has been flown all over the country with trips from their vendors. Meanwhile, they're trying to bring in very expensive voting equipment that security experts say is very risky and could be hacked easily. And they also are really incompetent. We see election after election where 200,000 voters are purged.
Yes.
Any election official's district can be targeted. Lydia Vasquez's district was targeted in 2016, and the WNYC did an investigation showing that many of the purges were in her district. And then in the 2018 election, we saw they didn't know how to handle wet ballots, and they were shoving the wet ballots into the scanners, even though that's a well-known problem that it's just standard that you should never put wet ballots into a scanner. So they don't seem to be competent, and we seem to have election after election with lots of problems. What would you do to hold the Board of Elections accountable, to make their process more transparent, less corrupt, and more secure?
We gotta start from the head down. So I don't know, we gotta fire the head person. Is Michael Ryan, is that? So I know Jemani called for him to be
He did.
fired, yes. And I will support that, because if we're having all these elections, all these issues and transfer, so obviously it's not getting through. And if you're a leader, you need to make sure these issues are corrected. We had to shut down PS 269 poll site. I don't know if you know about that. Last election, it was crazy. Cops was everywhere. People were fighting. They couldn't get in. It was long lines. It's a lot of issues that happen on election day, and I don't understand why. If they need to overhaul the whole training of everybody that's working there,
It's very little training that
it's
they have
very,
as a poll
they need
worker.
to make sure there's enough training, adequate training, because this is a way of voter suppression. Now, we have all the reforms when it comes to the Board of Election, but we can't fix the fundamental issues, then we're gonna start implementing new things with the same old issues. If it's something as simple as the ballot is wet, you can't put it in, and they're not, you're saying following that. If they're purging stuff, there's a lot of stuff that's not transparent, and people are not being held accountable. So we have bigger issues than just reforming an election, because we're talking about early voting, right? And it's not every site that's gonna be open.
But you also have, what you have with early voting is actually, in some ways, really increasing the risk factor,
That's what I'm
because now
thinking.
you're bringing
And
these
with
voting
e-poll-
machines, which are not secure to begin with, and you're putting them in all kinds of locations, libraries, hospitals, even supermarkets they were talking about. And so, and we don't have, we actually don't have robust enough audits to be checking and hand counting and making sure the machines are accurate. So there's a whole set of improvements that we need, and it needs to start with transparency and accountability. The Board of Elections makes a lot of their decisions behind closed doors, and then they come out to the meeting and they say, this is what we decided. And they're run by the political parties, and they really don't seem to be an agency that's accountable to anybody. So would you be willing to work with us to really try to hold that agency accountable
Yeah, I'll
and
tell you
get
something.
fresh blood in there?
I'm on a county committee, so I understand what you're talking about. It's crazy there. So what I would do is that Senator Myrie, the state senator, I know he's the chairman. I would definitely work with him to kind of figure out, like you said, there's always some holes and stuff. If we're not we're not dealing for the foundation of it. It's the security issue, the transparency, the accountability, and then we have all the reforms. We have to fix those issues and hold people accountable. And then when reforms come in, it's going to be impacted and compounded onto the issues that we have now. So I know that with them, like you said, with the security issue, issues, but then it's not every poll site when you're going to do early voting, and then they need an e-poll book, so that's going to be even more of a security issue.
It
when we
is,
do the e-poll
right.
books.
So it's very complicated. And one thing is that our
Yes.
our board of elections, they're appointed they're appointed basically on the basis of political relationships, not on competence. And our elections are technical now. We have a lot of machinery and
It's electronic, yeah.
and electronics, and we really need competent technical
Yes.
people to be running our elections, not people who are just there for political appointments. And so we
Yes.
really need that oversight. So you would work with us
Yes, definitely.
to try to get
so
that
I'm sure
type
that's
of
going to
oversight.
like a task force or some part that's independent of the Board of Election, that's holding people accountable. So that's something that we need to sit down with the senator and figure out how we can fix this issue. But it has to be someone definitely independent of the Board of Election, independent of the political bosses,
Right, some kind
independent of all of that.
oversight.
Yeah, it's going to have a lot of oversight. Thank you for bringing that up, because now it's even scarier now.
Well,
You know,
that's
it was
a
scary
central
before.
issue, right?
Now it's even 10 times scarier.
It could
Yeah.
affect you as a candidate, and it can. All of the decisions that we trust people to make are made by elected officials who are elected on this equipment. So it's very important that we pay attention to it and the people who are in charge of it.
Yeah, no, I definitely would have I'll probably stand up to that, even if I'm the only one. But we definitely have to make sure we change that. We need to be civically engaged in the community. And if we're teaching our community members, let's be civically engaged, we can't lie to them, because then we're lying to them at the other end of it, because you're never really having a chance to have your voice if it's not done transparent and we're not being accountable. So in order to have true civic engagement, people have to trust the government, have to trust the election process. They're not trusting the politicians, they're not trusting elected officials, they're not trusting government. We have to we have to hold people accountable and get people to trust the system again. But we have to fix it. And that's what I'm hearing.
That's great. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for meeting with us
All
and
right,
for sharing
no
your
problem.
vision. We really
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much. Is there any other questions? No, that's it?
Do we have any questions from the audience?
All right. Well,
Okay.
thank you so much for having me. I hope I answer your questions. I'm willing always to come back and ask more, but I'd love to be invited back to Block Association meetings so we can have conversations as well.
We'd love to meet with you.
Sorry, we do have a question.
we have a question.
Right here.
Yes, you were saying about training the people who work in the machine on election day. Now, how much longer do you think they should be trained?
I'm not sure the exact time they're trained now, because you said it's very little training.
I've talked to people who, I don't know the exact time, but I know I've spoken to people who are poll workers, and
I
they
think
were
it's
like,
one day.
they're just kind of.
I think it's one day. I think it's one day. It's one day. I'm not sure of the curriculums. I never did it before, but we need to look at that. And what are they training them on? Right? And there should be some kind of requirement. I don't know what the process is of hiring somebody besides they know the political. Okay, we answered that question. Sorry. We answered that question. Okay. There needs to be somebody that, like I said, for merit, that they could do the work and not who they know and who I like and who I want to make sure I get favors for at the end of the day. So that's what we're saying. The accountability. It goes back to accountability again, because everybody's getting paid in the process. And it's not being just fair and equitable. It's just who knows who. And that's basically what you're saying.
And I think there's constituencies that we can reach out to for poll workers. Maybe we can get young people to volunteer as poll workers more. They're more familiar with technology, as opposed to people who have, maybe are an older group that's often the poll workers and maybe is struggling with technology. So I think there's a lot of constituencies who could get involved, as you said, civic engagement.
Yeah.
And if they were poll workers, could help us solve some of our problems there.
Yes.
I know there was a New York Times article about poll workers, and it said that with the test, there's a test that you have to take, and the people teaching the class, I guess, will even go around and basically give people the answers to the test, and they still flunk the test.
Wow.
So it's just, it all goes back to what you said: education, civic engagement, and it does need to come back to our election process.
And I actually know a trainer from my church, so I'm gonna ask her. Now you have me curious. I'm gonna ask her about what is that process when she trained. What does that look like, and what could be improved? Having those trainers at the table and say, what can that really want to help? How can we make this better, as well? So I think when we talk about issues and concern, I never think it's one issue. It's one solution, right? There's policy. There's some common sense to it, right? And there's lived experience. And a lot of times those things are not put all all together. It's just, let's get the policy down to black and white and let's just go with it. But we have to make sure that it's comprehensive, it's a true assessment of what needs to happen, and the people that's going through it is at the tables. When you're not at the tables, you're not affecting your community, it's very easy for me to be disconnected for what you need. And that's what's happening. People are not feeling it, they're not close to it, and they really don't care. They just get into the next thing. So we just need to have stakeholders at the table that live in the community when we're making decisions.
Love that.
All right, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you so much for being with us.
All right, thank you so much.